Well, hello there, and thank you for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. My name is Adrian Moorhouse, and I'll be leading this session to keep your people motivated during COVID-19. Motivation is always fascinating me, actually. As a swimmer in the old days, people used to say to me, "Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you get up at 5:30? Why do you do it?" And I thought, "What's a good question? Why do I do it?" And intriguing myself as to what was driving me along. And then somebody asked me to do a motivation talk. I said, "What do you mean, do a motivation talk? How can I motivate other people? Can't do that." And so it's fascinated me over those years. That fell away a long time ago, of course, and started Lane 4 over 25 years ago. And in growing a business, having a few hundred people now, I've been hoping to be part of a reason that they get up and come to work, not just for me, but for our clients as well. The subject itself is an amazing one. And now with the situation we're all facing, there's so much uncertainty. And the ground we're standing on is shifting daily beneath us. So we've got about half an hour now to sort of run through the subject, not just motivation, but how do we do it through this particular period. And I'm delighted to be joined by Jewitt-Harris, who's a Consultant Director of Lane 4.
Hi, Adrian. Thank you very much. And yeah, once again, I think this is an amazing topic, especially at a time we face at the moment. Just to give you a bit of background, I head up our consulting team in Lane 4. I'm in Adrian's leadership team. I'm also a consultant working with our clients. And especially at this time, I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts and reflections that I'm getting from our clients. Just as a bit of background, as a consultant director, in other words, people who lead a team of consultants, I've always worked virtually. But what I noticed is that this is different. So I did go into the office, for example, but most of my time would be spent with my consultants out and about. But this is a different time, and so therefore I think we need to think about motivation in a different way. So I'm very excited to be with you this afternoon.
Yeah, and so of course, I guess in some ways, as a consultant myself, I face some of the same things Paul does with our clients, but I'm reflecting on it as a leader of Lane 4, so I'll bring some of those thoughts in as we go along. And by the way, please do use the chat box to ask questions as we go along. We'll wrap those up towards the end. We'll have 5 or 10 minutes towards the end to have time for those. So today, really looking at this, what is the understanding of motivation? I think a lot of people on the call will have a view of motivation where it comes from, how it starts and how you can manipulate it or not manipulate it, but how it's been affected now. During this time, the reasons why people do things has changed significantly. There's lots of information bombarding them and they're making very different choices. We're going to talk about what it is and how leaders can influence it, and then some top tips. We've got a few tips and strategies for maintaining it. And again, in the chat box, it'd be great to hear from some of your tips and strategies as well, because we're all facing it together. And it does relate, I think it's quite important at this point to relate to people at work and on furlough, because uniquely in this time, we have people that work for us who are actually not able to participate but are watching, which is quite a fascinating scenario. So the context, there is a quote, a chap called Damien Barr wrote a nice quote around the fact that we're all in the same storm, but we might be in different boats. So there is a storm and we've got different sized boats. And Lane 4 is a particular business. We have run face-to-face work for a long time. Of course, that's not happening right now, but we changed to digital quite a few years ago, so surviving in our own part of the storm. So Paul, do you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, thanks, Aid. What this makes me think of is that, in that image, we're looking at different sized boats, and in the same way that people on this webinar will have different almost different remits, different things they can turn to, different support mechanisms. And although we're all experiencing the same turbulence, it is the same thing. Each of us will have a different degree of capability and resources to go to. And I think a mistake to assume is that we're all experiencing it in the same way. And it might sound a trite thing to say, but someone who has very few resources is going to respond in a different way to someone who is very resourceful, has experienced maybe similar things in the past. I feel very fortunate that I work in this field, so I can look at these things from a different perspective and look to myself and how I might cope with that. But others who might be new to leadership or might not have that experience are going to experience this in a difficult way. So our appreciation of that, I think, is one of the first steps to understanding others' motivations as well as our own.
Yeah, it's also quite interesting, I think, Paul, in this particular situation, because we've noticed clients and people that work with us and friends of ours who in different industries. Some industries are full on, the food retail and the NHS, for instance. So there's some industries where you say, how are you motivated? And sometimes it's maybe just a case of helping survive and thrive during those times. But I think for a number of people, I don't want to mix our metaphors, but this idea of the furlough, when you've got people in the storm who are, if you like, I don't know if they're on the pitch. Some people are on the pitch playing the game, if I'm mixing my metaphor to use a football analogy. And some people are sitting on the bench as if they've been substituted, didn't want to be sitting on the bench, would like to be on the pitch playing with everybody else, and not able to do that. So the context for many people is different. So you've got different people in different situations. I just wanted to move on to if we sort of define motivation, and that we could run probably a week's webinar on this. For me, this is quite interesting. So as I said, I've been fascinated for a long time about it, and this idea that there is a difference between inspiration and motivation has sort of stood out for me over the years. And it goes back to that thing about this sort of motivational talk. I don't believe you can do them. I believe that you can inspire people. I think that inspiration, in the definition terms, comes from the action of moving the intellect or emotion. You can say something, you can create a picture for somebody, you can talk, you can share a vision, or say, here's what's going on, and you can stimulate their thinking or their feeling, their heart and their head. But that stays apart. Whether anybody does anything with that is down to them, not you. So you're the catalytic motion, but then the motive is the desire or the interest or the drive of that individual to do something with it. So ultimately, the person themselves is responsible for the motive, for the movement, if you like, the step that is taken. So whatever we try to do as leaders in sharing a way or a vision, or here's what's meaningful for us as an organisation, we can only move thinking and feeling, I believe, and then creating conditions that people can take a step. It's down to them. So creating the motive for themselves. Paul.
Yeah, actually, just a quickie on that one, Adrian. It reminds me of someone when I was started out doing this work asked me the question, how do I motivate my team? And I said to him, when you ask them what motivates them, what do they say? And he said, I've never thought of that. So just a quick thought. Anyway, so Adrian's moved us on to this idea of motivation and some of the drivers, if you like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these. Adrian and I will have a bit of a conversation, share some tips with you on those. And what I'd like you to do, or what I encourage you to do as we're going through these 4 areas, is to think for yourself, what does this look like? Which of these is going to be my strongest driver? And at the moment, which is the one, or maybe 1 or 2 of them, which you're feeling challenged by? And in doing that, you can understand that for yourself, and therefore, how do you react? What is it like when you are not feeling as you've got the autonomy that you want, you're not feeling part of something? And once we've got that for ourselves, we can start to think, well, actually, what impact do I have on my people? What impact do I have on my teams? And also, how much do I understand about others' drivers? To what degree do I understand people's need for competence, for meaning? And therefore, how might I alter my behavior, or if you like, my way of working, to enable people to get the most out of their motivation? So the 4 we're looking at is we're looking at autonomy, we're looking at belonging, we're looking at competence or capability, demonstrating that, and finally this idea of meaning. So as we move on to look at this first idea of autonomy, so what I notice, we've got four areas there: helping people to make their decisions, helping people to make mistakes if necessary and not being punished, so creating a safe environment to do that, helping people to find their own goals, and then enabling people to have all the information they need to make their own decisions and to make informed choices. And if I was to overlay my experience with my clients on this, I think as leaders, there is a temptation at the moment when visibility is less, where uncertainty is higher, is to start to grab control and maybe delve into areas that previously have been the responsibility of our reports, our direct reports. And so what then can happen if we start diving into that detail is we're actually taking away other people's autonomy. And of course, what that's likely to do is to have an impact on people's motivation, because all of a sudden the thing that they feel good about is being taken away from them. So it's our driver to want to be able to exercise our capability, or whatever it might be, is in some way inhibiting other people's ability to choose, to make choices for themselves, and to be able to make their own decisions. Aid, what would you add to that?
Well, it's quite interesting because I think it's well intentioned. Yeah, I think I saw this during the last recession with myself and my clients, was that the best intention, you want to create safety, you want to do the right things. So you feel like you've got to carry the weight on your shoulders as a leader.
Yeah.
Almost like you don't include other people because you've got to be shown and seen to be doing it all yourself. I think it links to the last one on here about access to information to make informed choices. Because I think that people, you maybe don't share as much information as you can. I mean, we've tried as much as we can to be as transparent with everything we get. How are we discussing the information that's coming at us every week, and what sense are we making of it? And then it's important to get sense check. So to actually work with people that work with you and maybe work for you, to sense check that, because you might actually be making different assumptions that might not help the organisation.
Excellent, great. So, and the other thing I'll just add in, although we're talking about motivation today, the thing that strikes me is the strong relationship between motivation as a topic and the neurological threat responses that people might experience. So if anyone wants to have a read on that, it's a really interesting topic, and I think there are an awful lot of parallels between our subject today and that, so I'd encourage that. So let's move on to the next one, and this is about belonging. This goes back to our primeval days of wanting to be part of a tribe, of wanting to be part of the group that is safe. And of course, different people will have different levels of drive to that. But when you're part of the tribe, when you're part of the group, there's something about safety. There's something about being part of a group of people who are going to be safe in the future. And we do that through developing shared values, opportunities, and working hard to provide opportunities when there isn't a face-to-face interaction that we should have, enabling collaboration, and actually trying to develop strong social networks. However, what we have to be a little bit cautious of, and I know this through sort of working with lots of organisations, is that the intent, for example, with furlough sometimes can have unexpected consequences. So what I notice is that people form tribes really quickly. When I'm running face-to-face workshops, I notice that people get into groups and there becomes an in-group and an out-group, or certain cliques form. And people, of course, do that because they have a strong desire for that belonging, or some do. Now, what we need to check on is how sometimes that can actually demotivate. So someone almost not belonging to a tribe that they would like to, or a group they would like to, can really impact them, especially if they have a strong belonging driver. So I'd really encourage us to think about what are the benefits of some of the social groups that we're creating, but what do we have to look out for as well? Hey, what about you? What about your experience with this?
So for me, just to start off with that metaphor, the football game, if you like, where you've got a team on the pitch, you've got some people sat on the bench wanting to get on, and maybe didn't want to be on the bench in the first place. But the very best squads that we've ever seen or worked with or been part of are those where everybody feels like they're in it together. They feel like they're all contributing no matter what their role. And you have a role if you're sat on the bench, and it's an important role. And I think that we've worked really hard at trying to create that one team mentality. And it's interesting because the values piece at the top, belonging, having shared values, this is where organisation values truly live out, I believe, where you see the deep culture of an organisation when right now you'll see those values playing out. And so many people, you've trotted out the phrase, we're all one team. Are you truly one team? What are you doing to engage the whole group of people? So whether it's in a small team, like a business unit, or even a smaller team, a work group, how do you pull people together? And we've been doing many social things like mixing groups. We have a Lane 4's Got Talent thing. We've got a virtual atrium where we have a lunch together. So many social occasions, quizzes. So make sure that there's not just one group working really hard to save the company, and there's one group just sitting there watching and thinking, well, they don't need me, do they? So I think it's very important. And for those that were connected to Dominic and Marnie, one of the other directors of Lane 4, and Chris Rogers did a session the other week. Chris talks a lot about informal coalitions. where decisions and culture is created in the informal networks and informal conversations you have. And I think as leaders, you've got to work doubly hard during this time to connect with those informal coalitions. So that's kind of what I would add to this one.
Great, thank you. And just one other point that I'd add is what I notice is sometimes an individual won't only have one of these. For example, they will have a combination, and I'm always interested in how the combinations work. So someone has a strong driver for autonomy, but also a strong driver for belonging, for example, and that might look a bit odd sometimes, but it's interesting how those two combine. So I think that's worth a little bit of a conversation at some point. So the third one is one which I've probably had the most conversations with the people I coach about. It is this desire and driver to demonstrate competence, to be able to tap into the things that we're really good at and use those and be able to get mastery, expertise, and to be able to demonstrate that and to live that. And we know that we have certain mechanisms that we can use to be able to help people to demonstrate that competence. We can provide feedback, both developmental and motivational. We can encourage people, maybe through our coaching, to really get forensic about getting developing mastery on any particular topic. We can make sure that people are working on stuff they're good at and help them to develop that competence and create those sort of meaningful opportunities. But the bit that I find most frequently comes to me is that, especially if you've got people maybe who have recently become leaders in an organization, have recently taken up a role, is that the very things that they relied on historically to be good at their job as a leader, some of those things have been taken away. So I was having a conversation with a delegate a few weeks ago online, and he was talking about the fact that in his job, what he really felt worked for him was getting out and talking to people face to face and catching them doing good things, ad hoc conversations, things which would enable him to notice what's going on and then to be able to respond to it. So there's a quote, managing by wandering around. And this he had built as his core competence. So all of a sudden, his team has all gone virtual, and he no longer believed he had the ability to be able to do that, and almost was questioning his identity as a leader. So considering I can't do the things that I have historically done, who am I as a leader? How can I do my job? And it's very interesting how if you then combine that with a bit of a threat response about status, because it's almost like, well, not only am I unsure about my competence, but I'm also feeling threatened. So to me, the interesting thing about this isn't focusing on the competencies. It's going to the things which are beneath that and starting to think, what are some of my beliefs? What are my values? What are my principles that I operate by? And how might I develop and land those in this new world? How can I practice? How can I demonstrate competence? But without feeling threatened by it, because we all learn new things. We're all learning how to use virtual and digital technology as we speak. But actually thinking it as a bit of an opportunity to how can I really get good at this allows it to no longer be a threat and then can be a driver. What about you, Aid?
The only thing I'd add on this one, I think, you did a pretty good job there.
I'm sorry about that.
It's fascinating. No, it's fascinating. No, with the task mastery thing, because I think that, with the controlling the controllables, we talk a lot about is if as everything becomes uncontrollable, you don't know how to get control. To control the controllables, it's often at a task level, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So it's almost like at the process goal level. So again, motivation and goal setting are interlinked, and you've got the outcome goal, the big goal, and then the measures, but the process goals, the task mastery is where you get control back. So for me, there's something about making sure people can be valued, see the value in a small step. And often, that small step might have been easy to do a few months ago, but right now it's harder to do, but they still need to feel good about that step they've taken. So
yeah, excellent. So Aid, we had a conversation about this one when we were prepping for this. So look, we know as we talk about leadership in terms of vision, support, challenge. So we've got words in there about encouraging employees to have an exciting vision. I'm wondering what's that like at the moment when actually the vision might not seem that attainable. helping people to connect with it. We know this is a really important thing to do under normal circumstances, but we also know we're not in normal circumstances or not familiar circumstances. So I thought this was quite an interesting one for us to have a conversation about, because, for you, when you look at this idea of creating meaning for people, what does it mean to you?
It's interesting because we, as you say, we're both on the board of Lane Forward. And I think that we've had an exciting vision for a number of years, and the word exciting is the word that stands out for me here. Is like, I think the vision piece, the purpose piece is important. So for me, a lot of organizations right now have got maybe even more of a defined purpose. Dare I say it? Because I think if you were, some of the things you're doing now are about survival. They're about helping communities, helping people. They are about life and death in some cases. So I just wonder whether, if you can hook into the purpose, and it might not be as exciting, it might not be as corporate as it used to be, but if you can have conversations with people about what we are truly doing here, there's something pretty strong in it. But it is absolutely that. Everything we try and do as leaders is give somebody a line of sight to what's important to them and what the company is doing. I don't know. I just wonder whether it's actually even more possible if you spend time, but don't hang on to the old one, as it were.
And actually, Ade, if I could pick up, because I've written down, you nicked my line of sight, because vision could be something which is a place to get to, but vision is also from where I am to where I'm going to get to. So the ability to break the complex. You did this in your Olympic career. I know you did that, and you do it now still with us as an organization. How do you break down nothing into very, very straightforward steps, which are quite difficult, but at least give us line of sight between where we are now and where we're trying to get to? So I think I've really backed what you're saying. It's not only the destination, it's creating a route map between where we are now and where we're trying to get to.
It's quite interesting. You know this. We created a bit of a mini strategy or vision. Maybe it was a vision at the beginning of all this, which was the 3-step thing, where we had to protect our people and protect ourselves, and defend what we can defend in terms of business, and then bounce forward. So sort of 3 steps to, and I think people have bought into that. And we spent a long time on protect, and there's still a lot of protect going on. But that different things can hook different people and their own motives. So I think that even now you don't be lazy with old visions, and be really clear about what you can offer people or what might be meaningful right now. I think that's quite important.
And one little final thing for me, just as you were saying that, Ade, the ability to have the right type of conversation and for people to talk about this and the destination, and to talk about how they might still do this considering where we're under, actually just adds to that, doesn't it? Because that brings a vision to life, and it brings the line of sight to life when people are still talking about it. Therefore, us as leaders still talking about it strikes me as being really important.
Yep.
Great. So final thoughts. So look, we just jotted down a few things here, just as almost like takeaways really for autonomy as leaders. Don't take away people's work. Set up the what, but help people to work out the how, because people will then find themselves excited by developing their choice to do that. Be aware of the fact that people can get tribal very quickly, and sometimes people might feel excluded, and that doesn't have to be the people who are furloughed. Actually, that can be the people who are still on the pitch, because working hard on the pitch, you might feel sometimes a bit on your own. And on the competency, I think this is not about thinking about what am I good at, what did I used to be good at, but going beneath the deck. What are the skills, values, principles that underpin your performance? Because those are consistent, those will always be with you. And if we work on those, then the competencies will just fall out. And when thinking about this meaning piece, to me, this is a question, and this is a time to take stock. Ask yourself the question, what can this period of time mean for me? So, and it's almost like a little thing to pull that together. I think for people who are listening to this, and I go back to myself as well, thinking about how do I balance my motivation? I am a really strong autonomy, I have a really strong autonomy driver. But what, in the absence of a full being able to sort of exercise that, do I emphasize on the others in terms of belonging, in terms of competence, or in terms of meaning? Because if I keep coming back to those, then I can sustain myself even when my autonomy has potentially been removed or limited.
So it's quite interesting, Paul. Being one of my team members, I should have given you the whole responsibility for this whole webinar. I shouldn't even be here, should I? Competence could have flown.
But what I really enjoy is the belonging to your team, Adrian. So I've been delighted to do this with you.
Okay, so I've been having a little scan of questions. So after that summary, we've had a few arrive now, which are pretty good. So thank you for that. I'll pick the first one and give Paul a chance to breathe. Interesting. So many organisations and industries are facing into a reductive future, at least into the short term. How can one engage a team in a phenomenal opportunity in the future, despite the weeds one is in now? And I think that's really interesting, because I think it comes back to, if I use the metaphor of my old world for a minute, win the Olympic Games, big old vision, great, nice one. And when you're 15, it seems like a bit of a dream. It's a good thing to say, but you've actually got to deal with what's in front of you, which is qualifying for the county championships. And so there's something about holding lightly something that could be inspirational, the motive to do something here and now, and connect the two things. I don't think you can avoid the reality. I think you can be, I don't want to be over optimistic about life. I don't think I am an optimist, but I think the realism tempers that. And I think the reality is that you show the weeds, you talk to people about what it is, you help people work it out with you, and you start to talk about where we could get to in the future, but we know that it's going to be a different future. So I think there's an honesty required with a lot of that. I think probably how I'd answer that just right now.
Okay. Aid, I've got a question here from Jonathan. How do you help a team to reset meaning if needed in a global team? And what I'm always faced, the first place I always go to with a question like this is how much a leader feels of responsibility to do it rather than to create an environment where it happens. So, you know, I know there's going to be all sorts of challenges in working with a global team, but actually simply by sharing that challenge, whether it's a domestic team, an international or global team, as a need, we would like to talk about meaning, and we would like to think about what this all means for us at the moment. Is a great question to be able to pose to a global team, and to be able to have some collaboration to be able to answer it, because once again, I come back to the fact that we don't have to answer all the questions. We have to just create an environment where the questions get answered. And actually, simply by posing the question back to the team, that enables them to demonstrate their competence, makes them feel part of something. They're more likely to find meaning in it if they've had an opportunity to contribute to that.
Can I come off the back of that? Because I think there's another question here which talks about, given the changing circumstances, how much rethinking is required, repurpose or meaning. And I think if you've got if it's strong, I think it should be ethical. I'm just thinking about our purpose is to make a difference to people's working lives and organizational performance. Mm-hmm. And I know that to make a difference to people's working lives is context free in a lot of ways, because we're trying to do that still. I do think though that a conversation about it, about what is meaningful for us now with what we're trying to do. I think that a strong purpose should still be there, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, Adrian.
That's right. I'm just moving on to a question.
I've got one. Can I grab it? The issue about people not feeling motivated to come back after work after being furloughed. And my immediate reaction to that is that it's a bit like, you know, I'd call this idea of matching, pacing, leading. If someone has had a period of time where they've been on the bench, as Aidan describes, expecting people to just get straight up to speed straight away and to be motivated straight away, I wonder about the reality of that. To me, it's about pacing. It's about gently encouraging people. It's about helping people to find what it was in the past that they felt motivated about, but actually creating a rhythm which builds that up, rather than expecting it immediately, because we all know people go through transitions. So almost matching, pacing, and then leading people. And without you being motivated about it, why would they? So ensuring that you really believe in it yourself, that you're understanding your own motivation, or maybe even sharing at times when you don't, because then you get the right sort of conversation out onto the table. I hope that's okay.
Great, thank you. Look, it's 2:30 now, and I know people are on tight time schedules. We are going to put out a vlog at the end of next week, and we're going to answer all these questions that you've all come up with. So keep an eye out on that on social media. myself and Paul, but I'll do that vlog.
Yeah. So for everyone who's attended this webinar, thank you very much for joining us. I really love to spend an afternoon chatting to people about and hopefully supporting people in this. Each one of you will receive one of these, which is basically a resource for you to go to. Specifically, it's an activity card which will have some of the information we've shared already, as well as some things that you can do and you can share with your teams to be able to help them to work with this idea of motivation. It is actually part of a wider offering that we have in helping to create high-performing teams. But if you've registered using a generic email address, if you send us your specific email address, we'll make sure you get a copy of this so that you can use it, you can retain some of the information that we've shared with you today.
Great. And so finally, thank you for being with us, as Paul mentioned then. If you like what he did, then you could tweet about him, because obviously competence is important to Paul. So it's been a massive pleasure. I enjoy belonging to this and doing it with Paul. And I know a number of people who've been listening, so have a good day. Thank you.
Great. Thanks all. Bye-bye.